Welcome to A Course in Miracles Workbook for Students, Lesson 73. I will there be light. Today we are considering the will you share with God. This is not the same as the ego's idle wishes, out of which darkness and nothingness arise. The will you share with God has all the power of creation in it. The ego's idle wishes are unshared and therefore have no power at all. Its wishes are not idle in the sense that they can make a world of illusions in which your belief can be very strong, but they are idle indeed in terms of creation. They make nothing that is real. Idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world you see. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it, and the ego's need for grievances, which are necessary to maintain it, peoples it with figures that seem to attack you and call for righteous judgment. These figures become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances. They stand between your awareness and your brother's reality. Beholding them, you do not know your brothers or yourself. Your will is lost to you in this strange bartering in which guilt is traded back and forth and grievances increase with each exchange. Can such a world have been created by the will the Son of God shares with his Father? Did God create disaster for his Son? Creation is the will of both together. Would God create a world that kills himself? Today we will try once more to reach the world that is in accordance with your will. The light is in it because it does not oppose the will of God. It is not heaven, but the light of heaven shines on it. Darkness has vanished. The ego's idle wishes have been withdrawn. Yet the light that shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we will look for it. Your picture of the world can only mirror what is within. The source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. Grievances darken your mind, and you look out on a darkened world. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. I'm going to read that again because I feel like this sentence is really key to this lesson. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, your true will, and lets you look upon a world of light. We have repeatedly emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and your salvation. The reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? I'm going to pause and say, the ego absolutely does. The ego, that part of us that is fear and doubt and worry and grievances, absolutely wants everyone to suffer and pay for their sins, including your true self that is actually perfect, whole, and complete, but the ego doesn't care because it wants to make a martyr of everyone and wants to punish everyone. Forget the ego's arguments, which seek to prove all this is really heaven. You know it is not so. I'm going to pause and say, you know it's not so because heaven isn't that petty and small and blind. You cannot want this for yourself. There is a point beyond which illusions cannot go. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness you really want. Such is your will in truth, and so salvation is your will as well. You want to succeed in what we are trying to do today. We undertake it with your blessing and your glad accord. We will succeed today if you remember that you want salvation for yourself. You want to accept God's plan because you share in it. You have no will that can really oppose it, and you do not want to do so. Salvation is for you. Above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. Today it is the ego that stands powerless before your will. Your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. I'm going to pause here and say, the first time I went through A Course in Miracles, I really felt like my ego was fighting these words. I'm not going to speak for anyone else, just for myself. I could feel this huge resistance, like, well, what about this? And what about that? And really all I had to rely upon was this deeper knowing that what I was reading was true, even if my mind couldn't quite understand it. I could feel the truth of it. And I knew that if I kept going, and sometimes I didn't even know, I just hoped that if I kept moving forward in the course with an open heart and a willingness to understand, that the truth of it would be made manifest. And it was. But I did go through phases and specific lessons where I could feel my ego fighting this and coming up with excuses and reasons and arguments. And I appreciated that, because I was able to see the ego's arguments. And when I picked them apart, they were really quite petty and sad and harmful. And I saw the truth of the workbook in observing that. Like, oh, my thought system, the thought system of ego, is really miserable and does not want me or anyone else to be happy. And the ego can do a really good job camouflaging that, but when you look at it deeply, the ego would much rather be right than happy, which is insane. Because right, according to who? Just one person's subjective beliefs, who has their own unique life experiences and DNA, nurture, and nature that doesn't match anyone else's. But the ego doesn't care, because it wants to be God, the final and ultimate authority of truth, even though that in and of itself is ridiculous. Salvation is for you. Above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. And it's not the ego. Today it is the ego that stands powerless before your will. Your will is free and nothing can prevail against it. Therefore, we undertake the exercises for today in happy confidence, certain that we will find what it is your will to find. And remember that it is your will to remember. No idle wishes can detain us nor deceive us with an illusion of strength. Today, let your will be done and end forever the insane belief that it is hell in place of heaven that you choose. We will begin our longer practice periods with the recognition that God's plan for salvation, and only His, is wholly in accord with your will. It is not the purpose of an alien power thrust upon you unwillingly. It is the one purpose here on which you and your Father are in perfect accord. You will succeed today, the time appointed for the release of the Son of God from hell and from all idle wishes. His will is now restored to his awareness. He is willing this very day to look upon the light in him and be saved. After reminding yourself of this and determining to keep your will clearly in mind, tell yourself with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. Then let your will assert itself, joined with the power of God and united with yourself. Put the rest of the practice period under their guidance. Join with them as they lead the way. In the shorter practice periods, again, make a declaration of what you really want. Say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. It's not your true will. It's the will of the ego, but we're releasing that. This should be repeated several times an hour. It is most important, however, to apply today's idea in this form immediately you are tempted to hold a grievance of any kind. This will help you let your grievances go instead of cherishing them and hiding them in darkness. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you tomorrow for lesson 74.